sales guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It's Thursday, the 10th of September. I'm Peter Martin. Alan Ruff, Tam Cowan and Steven Naismith are with me on this Thursday. Delighted to have your company. You can like, share and follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as ever, Ruffie, you can always tell what happens when someone comes on the show over a period of time. Suddenly, they become more affluent. Their whole profile is raised, and then they go out and buy themselves a drawing room. And they get themselves an extension. So that's what happens. Suddenly, Steven Naismith has what can only be described as an MGM backdrop there, Roughie. So things must be going well for him.
Yeah, it looks impressive. It looks as if the way to go. Obviously, I thought we were going to get Scotland caps and pictures and everything up in the wall there, but no. It's maybe there's a puppet show coming.
Last week I didn't understand what Tam was talking about when he said he wasn't getting paid that well. I didn't understand it.
Brilliant.
Can I remind you though, Peter, I must remind you, I do have a writing bureau.
Yes.
That's not just a desk, that is a writing bureau. Okay.
That's fantastic. Brilliant. So everybody's in place. We've got lots to talk about. You can indeed offer us your thoughts. Hi to Kathleen Madden, Mary and Christie, Ronnie Porter, Stuart Derrick is with us in Bonnie Dundee, and it is indeed Stuart. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Lindsay Story, Scott Graham as well, and John Aird. All those people that I've mentioned are on rapidly as soon as we come on air. So I'm delighted. Hi to Niall and Andrew Davison as well. So with that in mind, let's talk about the most important factor here, which is quite simply, it's a little bit of a blow to Scottish football yet again, Roughie, and that's quite simply on the basis that the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has come out and said, OK, the test events can go ahead this weekend, but suddenly any chance of moving it on a stage further has been thwarted by this increase in the number of cases we're getting from COVID-19. We can't escape it, Roughie. I'm now looking at it and thinking to myself, it's now going back to October the 5th at the earliest before she'll contemplate people, maybe stadia and other clubs, getting a chance to get fans in. She will look at individual test requests, but it looks as if we're heading to October again now.
Yeah, I think it was to be expected. I think we all knew that something was round the corner, was going to kibosh it. It's unfortunate for teams like myself and Steven there, who obviously have friendlies organised against certain teams to get us up to speed. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I'm sure all the players were really keen to get back into some kind of action, but it just sets everything back. And let's hope it's precautionary. And I can see where she's coming from. If there are more, spikes arising, we'll have to do something about it. And it's for the long term, so we just have to go with it.
Here's the other scenario here, Steve, and I'll get Tam's thoughts on it as well, but we're now in a situation where you could be mid-October by the time you guys get in action. The first Old Firm game of the season is set for the 17th, but there's another problem on the horizon. The SFA tried to hold back on the Scottish Cup semi-finals and the final, hoping that they were going to eventually get, the potential of £3 million in the kitty, but that looks as if it's a forlorn hope.
I think so. And as it's the thing in general is a moving target. I said last week, it's massive that the fans get back to the games because, especially in Scotland, it brings so much, but it must be safe. That's the biggest thing. In terms of the Scottish Cup, that is going to have its end date. That I presume their dates are in and they're not moving. So it's looking more and more likely that it is going to be 2 games and then the final behind closed doors.
It's a real body blow, Tam, isn't it? I mean, financially, let's not forget, even when we get to mid-October, Tam, some clubs lower than the Championship, maybe 1 or 2 in the Championship, are really going to feel the financial strain of this.
Absolutely, it's a body blow in that respect, and it's yet another, in general terms, a kick in the nuts for Hearts, because they, of course, have got that semi-final to play against Hibs when they'll barely have had any competitive football under their belt. And even though, Peter, there's not going to be any crowd there, any sort of Hibs-Hearts game, particularly something like a semi-final in the Scottish Cup, it's absolutely massive. And you would need to already strongly fancy Hibs for a game like that. But what I would say, Peter, on the point of the testing and the two games that will go ahead this weekend, I mean, I'm quite happy to take on board all the advice from the government and the football officials, etc. But I could have chucked them a wee bit of advice back. I don't see, if they are test games, why have the two of them kicking off at the same time? I think if there were test games, you should have had one on at, say, 3 o'clock on Saturday, another one at 3 o'clock on Sunday. And then basically, after the first one, the first test game has taken place, you get the clubs, all four clubs, to say, right, what went wrong with you? What went bad for you? And what can we learn before we get into the Sunday? And then we do the other test, and so on and so forth. I don't see the benefit of having two test games on at exactly the same time. I'm a wee bit baffled.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you make. The other difficulty here, Roughie, regardless of all the precautions and all the protocol that they want fans to follow, if you have a situation, and this is where Rangers have fallen foul of it this weekend, Roughie, if you have a situation where there are regions where quite simply it's all closed down, it doesn't matter what rules you want to put in place, it's just not happening. And I think that's where we are in great difficulty in the forthcoming months.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are surprised, that some of the areas that are picking it up. And you're right, if you're in that catchment area, you're obviously on red alert again, because if we're looking at the numbers and the numbers they're throwing out there, it is pretty serious. So there's no way you can allow fans into grounds, in and around the areas. So we just have to suck it up and get on with it.
Yeah. Johnny Mulaney says this is all because people cannot follow simple rules. Well, I must admit, I've watched all the news over the past couple of days, and I certainly wouldn't like to get involved in a row blaming one certain section of the community more than another, because this virus is not really starting to isolate itself and attack just one particular group. But I'm sure there's lots of people are unhappy with certain members of the youth who seem to want to go out. Some people are actually getting scunnered with the rules, and of course, off the back of that, Stephen, we have this little caveat that's the biggest problem for Scottish football is clubs saying we must do something. If you've got Andrew Lloyd Webber saying we must do something because nobody's going to the theatre and it could collapse, we're in the football situation saying we must do something to get the fans in, and you've got both of them grinding against each other.
Exactly. We have in the restart period made a few mistakes in terms of the instance before and breaking the rules, but I think everybody in Scottish football can see this massive problem coming towards us, and literally your hands are tied at the moment. You're sitting waiting for the government to make the calls. As much as each individual club will be sitting going, we are confident we can put the procedures in place. That's not, they can't take that into their own hands. It all needs to come from the government, which is worrying. It's worrying because the longer it goes, the more cases that happen. Going into the winter as well, it is definitely worrying times.
Absolutely. And over and above that, every time we go from day to day and hear of a player suddenly contracting the virus, then the worries, are around the club and the potential team that they could be playing and how many players he's been in contact with. And I'm talking, of course, about Jack Annick at St Mirren. And Jim Goodwin was speaking today about what the club does when the players are with them.
We can control what we can control here at the training ground and at our stadium, and the club are doing everything they can at that end. Unfortunately, when players go home to their families, then maybe their family's working environment, or maybe other places aren't maybe as strict as what we are, and that's where you get the crossover, unfortunately.
Well, the crossover here and the penalty for it, Tam, is quite simply 3 games. Suddenly Hibs, Celtic and Dundee United, he's out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a gamble. But let he, without sin, cast the first stone here, Peter. I mean, these guys, we know if they've been a flagrant breach of the rules, then that's one thing. But, you know, we're all human. And even at lunchtime there, when we were speaking off air, Peter, I'd popped into a place for my lunch. And I went through the normal procedures. I put the mask on, I had the gel on, the sanitizer in there. I only removed the mask when I was sitting down. But it was only when I went back out into the car park that I realised I'd walked out of the restaurant without putting my mask back on. So, you know, I had effectively gone against the grain there. I might even have broken the law. It's very, very easily done. So we don't, unless somebody has done something no deliberately and something that is going to give us real concern in football, like the Aberdeen 8 did, like Mr. Bolingoli did, then I think we just need to take a wee step back and maybe not get our knickers in too much of a twist and just hope that it goes on. Hope we get the fans back into football. Hope we get a bit of money getting back into football. And on the finance note, Peter, I would ask you, I mean, we're obviously delighted that we have Arnold Clark as our main sponsor on board with PLZ. But somebody asked me this week, and I'm looking at Roughie there, wondering if Roughie, courtesy of his hair at the front, if we get subliminal advertising with McDonald's because it looks like the golden arches on Roughie's head. Can you see that? Just need 2 big bits of it. So we could get shit at McDonald's. I say we go for it. Every penny's a prisoner these days, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Tam, if I could pull that off, I would not be taking the moral high ground with McDonald's, let me tell you. But I have to say, of the 4 of us in the little boxes, there's only one that looks as if he avoids McDonald's, and he's wearing white. And he looks okay. Anyway, apart from that, I mean, listen, we're not having a go at the criticism of Jack Anick in this situation, because even the manager Jim Goodwin reckons the player has followed the rules.
Yeah, we're very confident. Our players are well aware of what's expected of them. You know, we continuously reminding them of, you know, what the protocol is and the guidelines that they have to stick to, and you know, the players know that they're not allowed, you know, into public situations that are going to be maybe not adhering to the social distancing.
Yeah, and off the back of that, Aki's defender Lee Hodson will also miss a couple of games for coming into contact with someone who's tested positive, and he'll miss Livingston and Kilmarnock. So slowly but surely, as these things emerge, the penalty is the manager suddenly has players, maybe 1 or 2 who are not key, but when the key ones start to hit, it can hurt you when you're putting your team together for these important games. On a positive side for St Mirren fans out there, Lee Irwin from Ross County looks as if he is on his way and very close to signing Lee Irwin. Lee Irwin was good, Tam, I have to say, when he had a spell at Motherwell.
Yeah, but you immediately ask any Motherwell fans, or indeed ask any Rangers fans, and they just kind of remember the BLL Moshney incident at the end of a second leg of a playoff game. And that's one of these things. I've always argued that as great a player James McFadden has been, absolutely brilliant at Motherwell, he got his chance at the bigger clubs and fabulous for Scotland. With James McFadden, you seem to think the goal in Paris, and then you're struggling to remember anything else. And sadly, it's the same with Big Lee Irwin for me then. When he get beasted in, him and Bilal Moshney had a cracking bit of fisticuffs at the end of that game, which was always sensational to watch as a supporter when you've got a ringside seat. So, not a bad lad, though. When I met him at any of the Motherwell days, he seemed to be quite a centred kind of young guy. And so that's what you like, you know, a bit like the guy you're going to be talking about soon, young Aaron Hickey.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, Steven, and it's a good question for you. Have you ever been on the park and had the full scale of the left hook and the right hook flying?
No, I'm normally in there winding it up to start with, and then make my move out of there before it gets to that point. I've seen a few scuffles and that, but not involved in them normally.
Yeah, Roughie, you can relate to exactly what Steven Naismith is all about. You know, yeah, a big Barney, and you are the furthest man away from it all.
Yeah, but you know the reason why I was the furthest man away from it. I'd already been booked earlier on for complaining about a penalty, but that was the Graham Souness, George McCluskey, Hibs Rangers game where I think somebody in the dressing room told Graham Souness that somebody was out to get him, and it was a bit of a mistaken identity because it was supposed to be Stuart Beattie he was supposed to get, and it was George McCluskey. so that's what happened there.
Yeah,
But yeah, you're right. Everybody get booked.
Yeah, absolutely. Still, when you look at some of the tackles that were going in that day, it was a ferocious one, a great welcome to Scottish football at the time. Trust Tam to remember the full scaler with Bilal Mojni. Where is he now, Bilal Mojni? Good recalling of that one, Tam. As far as everybody else, when they're talking about games now, Scott Brown was having a chat today. Of course, Celtic for Mary's Meals have, and the foundation, which does some great work, has donated £100,000 to Mary's Meals. I mean, if anything, and you're probably best placed for this, Stephen, you know, you got clubs up and down the country who make donations, do things for charity, yourself and all the stuff that you've been doing for charity. This is the worst possible time because I think charities are suffering greatly because of this, because there's a huge hole in their budgets, and you'll know that from your on-hand experience of this.
Yeah, there is, and in the side of the charity, it gets to the point where they know everybody else and their situations are not great and ideal. But the one thing that hopefully comes out of this whole thing is it brings everybody a bit more together. I know with Loaves and Fishes in Glasgow, they're inundated in terms of getting some food parcels out to people, and they just can't cope with the demand. That is effectively it. And in these times, it's only getting worse. But I must say, in general, the clubs have all now got great setups in terms of helping their charities are linked with the clubs, and Celtic shown by example with that amount of money is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Scott Brown speaking today echoed your sentiment, Stephen. You know, they want fans back in the ground at Celtic Park, but he says, you know, it's got to be safe.
It's hard playing in front of no fans. You can hear everyone chatting away, you can hear everyone shouting. But for us, it's all about getting the fans back in as safely as possible. And here's hoping we can do that very soon. It's crucial that we get fans back into the stadium and that we start playing in front of them yet again. But as I say, we need to do it safely. And this is a little test for us, and here's hoping it works well.
Yeah, I want to get your guys' thoughts, obviously, on the signings that Celtic have made ahead of their game this weekend, Tam. David Turnbull hasn't quite kicked a ball for Celtic yet. He was on the bench in the last match, but the amount of players that I hear that they reckon they've got a gem from Motherwell, and you would have seen him up close and personal.
Absolutely. I've no doubt. I mean, they're obviously breaking them in gently. I'm very, very surprised, even just for the sake of, you know, maybe even Celtic throwing a bone to the media and giving him a wee story that he didn't even kick a ball against Motherwell when he was on the bench. In fact, he didn't kick a ball. You could have been forgiven that day for thinking he was still playing for Motherwell, because none of the other players kicked a ball that week either. Motherwell players on the day, of course, saying that day, and I wonder if Stevie disagrees with me. He, of course, played in the 4-6-0 night in the Czech Republic. But when I heard the Motherwell players after that one, Peter, saying we came to Parkhead to try and frustrate Celtic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think, Stevie, that the best way to frustrate a team is maybe to put the ball in the back of their net. I found that frustrates a lot of teams, you know, rather than trying to build a kind of Mexican border-style wall on the edge of your penalty box. I mean, I just thought that was a rank approach. And as somebody that's had a season ticket for 40-plus years at Fir Park, you know, my pals were talking about it. We've seen far too many Motherwell teams take that approach at Parkhead and Ibrox down through the years, and it very, very, very rarely comes off. I think it's bonkers. What's your take on it, Stevie?
I think in terms of when they're talking about frustrate, it's about stop starting the game. It's making the game that slow tempo rather than just saying, right, we're going to sit in our 18-yard box. It can be difficult. If you look at the Kilmarnock teams over the last few years under Steve Clarke, they sat in and countered them, got good results from it. But it's difficult when you play one way to then change for that one game because effectively you need everything to go perfectly well. Defence, the midfield, all lining up and their movements all together. And when that doesn't happen, Celtic have the quality. But if you go the opposite, you could be 2 down before you know it.
Well, here's a
Yeah, but I
question
mean,
then.
would you be happy yourself, Stephen? Let's say for the amount of talking this season, we get into next year, Hearts are drawn, let's say, away from home in the Scottish Cup against a big team like Livingston or St Mirren. Would you be happy going there as the underdogs, as the wee team for the lower leagues, and basically shutting up shop, parking the bus?
It'd probably feel like we were the bigger team because we probably have more fans there, but we wouldn't park the bus. We'd be going for the win, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about it, I mean, this is the strange thing though, Roughie. A lot of fans would say, and a lot of fans of the bigger clubs do say, listen, you're going to sit in, why not just have a go? Your percentage of getting anything from a game by sitting in is pretty low. Why not just have a go? But I think the one thing, the element that Stephen mentioned there that we can't forget, Roughie, is you have a go at good players and they can absolutely batter you.
Yeah, I think if you listen to any manager and having a go means pushing people forward. If you're pushing people forward, if you're playing against a team who are very quick in the counter-attack, there's going to be gaps all over the place. So I think you've got to be organised. I think you've got to be disciplined. There is a time when you've got possession of the ball where if you've got players in your team who can go forward and hurt the opposition, that's when you use it. But you've seen so many games, teams going to Parkhead, very organised, it's nothing each, right up until half time, and then lo and behold, they get a wee bit of confidence and they push forward, and all of a sudden, bang, they're a goal down. It's all about, as Stevie said, it's all about every man doing the job that they've got to do. And generally, that's when the good teams pick you off if you start charging forward.
Yeah.
See, just on that the manager will have gave the team a few points in terms of when we act, when we'll do this, this, and this. That might not have happened just because they might not have been there. But he's no went out and went, we're going to sit in the 18-yard box and keep the ball at our goal.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about it. I mean, a lot of people think you send them out with that attitude. And listen, it's not just a line to Scottish football. It's right across Europe. When you come up against really big teams who've got quality players who can hurt you, sometimes it's not the tactics that you're following. It's just the way the game evolves, and you're quite simply pressed back to your 18-yard line. But it'll be interesting to see what develops over the weekend because every slip up is being monitored on a weekly basis. I'm delighted that we're back to the club football as well. It'll be great when we get Championship, League One and League Two back on as well. Thanks to Colin Terrace, who says Bilal Moshney is at Grimsby Town.
Wow.
Have you ever been in Grimsby, Tam?
No. Big fishing port, I believe.
Yeah.
That's all I know about it, but I've never been close to it, no.
Yes, it's not the place that I think I would really like to live just because of that. At times there can be a stench, Roughie. I'm just saying it to you. It's not a criticism of the people from Grimsby. I'm just saying that there's a fishy smell and it's hard to put up with. Just thought I'd tell you that. Niall Kane, who's a big Motherwell fan, says, Peter, what's Steven Naismith's thoughts on Aaron Hickey being Bologna bound? I thought he'd signed a £132 million deal, Stephen. There was press and everything waving him away, getting his thoughts on it. I mean, you fair play to the lad. I think he was a wee bit shocked by it himself.
He wouldn't have been comfortable, I'm telling you that for sure. But he's decided that move. We spoke about it over the last few weeks, and he is a level-headed guy, and his moves mainly for footballing reasons. That's the big one. I think in a few of his comments, he spoke about that. He wants to go involved, and whenever I've spoke about potentially going to another league, a foreign league, I told him, look, you need to fully throw yourself into it. You might feel uncomfortable, you might feel homesick. Try and get through that, because that's going to give you the best chance to feel comfortable and perform better on the pitch. So I'm delighted it's finally done for him, and I think everybody's happy.
Yeah, the other good thing about it, and I think he was very complimentary about your guidance and chatting with him and giving him that little insight. Because if anything, yes, we all want him to play. We hope he becomes an even better player. But again, it's all those outside influences that can have an impact on how you feel about your daily life that can thwart whether you're able to develop and stay, Stephen.
Yeah, and again, that's, as a fan from the outside, you think goes to training, brilliant, finishes at lunchtime and all the rest of it. But there's so many more emotions of, he doesn't know anybody. He'll be going in really nervous to think, right, I want my teammates to think I'm a good player, to see my qualities. I want to impress the manager. So all this will be going on in the background. Now, the first month or so, I think the adrenaline and that will take him through it. But after that, he then needs to just settle down and enjoy it, first and foremost, because what a move it is. And secondly, fight. I said to him many a times last year, but also when he was moving, they might be saying, oh, you're going to come into the squad, but your first aim is get in the team. Get in the team, and whoever's playing left back, get him out the team. And he's proved every challenge so far that he's up for the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Great attitude to have on it. I'd like to read out a number of people who join us. Alistair Gardner, David Darcy as well, Andy Wilson. Hello from Perth. Andy is a regular from Perth, Australia, who joins us. Great to have you watching us again, Andy. Always good to hear your comments. Scott Hughes is watching the show, and his comment, I mean, I like to read out some that are opinionated and some that are just statements every now and then, Tam. I'm sure in your own show, on the radio show, you just read out statements. And Scott Hughes says, good luck to Glasgow Rangers this season. Here's hoping you win the league, you wonderful club. So no real point there, just a proclamation of love for Rangers. But I thought I'd read it out, Scott, because that's what it's all about. You know, if you love your club and you want to put a point about them.
Think, Peter, if the gentleman who sent that in was actually, and he's just thinking, you know what, we've got a terror with the virus, we don't know when we're back at football. I'd just like to wish my old rivals all the very best. Wouldn't that be lovely? We'd be reaching for the hankies.
Yeah, Tam, there's more chance of Stevie dipping down to McDonald's for a Big Mac and a strawberry milkshake, to be honest with you. Anyway, apart from anything else, we always like to read out as many of the messages as we possibly can. So thank you again. And then Scott goes on to say, Hickey will fail just like all the other Scottish players do. So there you are, from one positive mention of his club to slaughtering a player. I really do hope the young Hickey boy has a successful time in Italy. It's a hard place to go and be a success, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he does indeed succeed. Talking of players, we talked about Turnbull there. Shane Duffy is now coming in. We will all get a look at him and see how he's shaping up as a central defender. Celtic certainly need one, and Scott Brown has been glowing in his praise of the two new signings at Celtic.
He's played really well against us as well, and he's a fantastic footballer. He's young, he's keen, and he wants to be at this club, and I think that's the main thing for us. And Shane is the exact same. He's international for Republic of Ireland. He's a leader. He's great in the air. He's good with the ball at his feet as well, and he's a strong defender. But for us, it's great. It's a great few signings that we've brought in recently, and that's definitely going to help strengthen the squad.
Yep, so we'll get a look at them and see exactly how they fare. One little body blow as we switch to Rangers, Roughie, is Borna Barisic. Looks as if he's picked up an injury. It was obviously a knee injury, and coming back off international duty. That's the last thing Steven Gerrard wants to hear.
Yeah, I think that's what the managers at Rangers and Celtic dread when an international game comes round. There's so many players leave the dressing room, and you're just hoping they all come back. But he'll be a big miss. For me, he's been the Rangers player of the year so far. You know, he's been absolutely immense in every game. he's up there. You know, he's tremendous balls into the box, and obviously his free kicks as well. So you're right, Rangers manager, but we're really, really struggling to get his head around that one, and hope he's not out for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Stephen, but I mean, I like Barisic. I think his quality of crossing has been superb.
Real quality. I think that he's a key player, and I think he's shown that. He's maybe took a bit of time to get used to the kind of rough and tumble of English football and how everybody's wanting to make their mark in the big game, Rangers and Celtic. But his delivery, not from set plays, but when he's on the move, when he gets into that final third, he can be first to tip a ball, and it's on the money more than more. Over the years, I think he'll just get better and better, but it'll be a blow to Rangers this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. A big blow. It looks as if Bassey will come in to offer a replacement for Rangers in that one. And of course, I was just looking there at the games that we can all look forward to. Interestingly enough, Roughie, and I don't want to, obviously cast aspersions on Sky Sports, but every English Premier League game this weekend is live. You can see it live, and you can't see a Scottish game for love nor money. None of them, Roughie, are there for us to watch. So Aberdeen, Kilmarnock, Livingston against Hamilton Accies, Motherwell, St Johnstone, Rangers, Dundee United, Ross County, Celtic, and St Mirren, Hibs. Apart from 600 lucky fans who'll get to see two games, the rest of us have to hope that, the press is one thing, but the fans will have to look and try and get on some kind of stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a disappointing one that I think everybody that pays a subscription, particularly up here, are under the influence that they're going to get games. So I'm really shocked about that one. Obviously there's a reason for it. You probably tell me what it is. But the streaming seems to be the way that most of the clubs are going to handle this one for the majority of the fans. So it's a strange one for me.
Yeah, it's a blow, Tam, isn't it?
Well, they're obviously, we know where Sky Sports stand. They're obviously giving English football huge licks. Did you say that every single game is going to be on, Peter? Every top flight game in England, yeah? That's them starting back their new season, right? So the bottom line is they would always have managed to squeeze a game in. And this weekend, correct me if I'm wrong, in any other normal week, it would have been the Ross County Celtic game. Any other week, Celtic or Rangers, when they're away from home, those games go on the telly. So it'd been Ross County against Celtic switched to the Sunday, but they clearly don't have room for that. They clearly don't care about that because they've got the number one concern, the English football back. So Scottish football just gets scudded in the chops. And as I say, the good thing, though, is that fans have got the streaming service, which means that you will be able to watch a game in some shape or form. So that's pretty decent. But, what you would have said ordinarily, and I can nearly cry when I think about this, Peter, if you thought we had a full league card with none of the games on the telly, you'd have said, great, get the fans out there to click through the turnstiles and actually watch a game instead of sitting in their armchair. But sadly, we just don't have that opportunity in these troubling times. So,
Stuart Carruthers says Motherwell season ticket holders can watch the game.
Yeah. Motherwell against St Johnstone. And what's actually happening, God bless the BBC, Peter. They do open all mics on a Saturday. And to help celebrate the 25th anniversary of me and Cosgrove hooking up, last year was the 25th anniversary off the ball, but Stuart wasn't involved in the first year. It was Greg Hemphill was the host. This year, it's me and Stuart's 25th anniversary. So as a wee anniversary gift for the silver anniversary, they're allowing me and Stuart to go to Fir Park on Saturday and do the open all mics gig, which means, of course, joy of joys, we'll be able to sit and watch our teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the first time you've mentioned that you work at the BBC with a guy called Cosgrove. I didn't know that, Roughie. And the other thing about it is, now that we found out that Greg Hemphill was in year one, Roughie, this is a real chance to go through the remainder of the year mentioning the 25th anniversary of Tam and Cosgrove as well. So what a joy it is for us every Thursday, Roughie.
Yeah, I'm actually amazed it's 25 years, and God, it's lucky Tam told us that. We would never have known.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget.
Listen, you know what? I must say to Roughie as well, very, because he skimmed by it. Even though he's trying to be smart there with me, but one wee thing I want to mention about Roughie, because he's far too humble a man to mention this. I know that for a fact. I mean, Roughie indeed once said to me that when he dies, he would like the word humble put on his statue. That's true. But Roughie. But Roughie was far too humble to mention that just a week. Did you just get that, Peter? That just a week after Gary Lineker said that he was going to move a refugee into his house with him, I saw Roughie last week looking up on his computer 16 and Slovakian, a website, and it would appear, I'm guessing, that he is also thinking of moving a refugee into the spare room. So well done, Roughie, you're some man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you'll not be aware of this, Stevie, but on the after dinner circuit, when you get to a situation where he can see a gag and he knows he can get it in, he waits, and then he's like, it's like a red rag to the bull, and he's in there and he'll get it in no matter what, and he's managed to do it there. Absolutely.
I have to say, Tam is actually quite psychic, to tell you the truth, because the housekeeper that I have is Slovakian, and she comes in on a Friday.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic, isn't it? You haven't forgotten your roots anyway. And Martin George Miller says that must be Slovakian Senga. And for the benefit of Stephen, if you don't know, Senga was Roughie's first love. Which, Stephen, I know you've never been asked this in a football show, but can you remember your first love?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Keep it private, but I'm a quiet
okay
man.
Then. Absolutely, and that's
Jim
next week's
Jeffries
competition. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, good to hear that from you, Roughie. Good stuff. There's one element that when I was reading the sports news this morning that I don't know. I mean, I really wanted him to do well up at Aberdeen, but Craig Bryson, it hasn't worked out for him, Stephen. I think Derek McInnes has been fairly honest about the whole thing. You know, he couldn't shake off injuries, and in the end, they've just decided, to cut their ties, and he leaves Aberdeen. And I think I thought he was going to be a real bonus for the Dons.
Yeah, funny. At the same time, I think Craig Levein was trying to get him to Hearts. So it's unfortunate. The one thing I do know, and I've seen Derek's comments about how hard Craig had worked to try and get fit, and that I believe that wholeheartedly, because he's a great pro. He really looks after himself and works really hard on his fitness and the gym work that goes along with it. So it's a tough one, but again, personally myself, as you get older, everything becomes much tougher. When you're in training and you've got sprints to do or reactions and things like that, whenever for the last 10 years it's maybe felt very easy and comes very quickly to you, you need to work on it a bit more as you get older. And I think he's in that bracket at his age.
Have you changed the way you train?
Yeah, without a doubt. I was having a conversation the other day with some of the boys, and in your mind, nothing changes. You still feel the exact same, and you want to go out to training and do everything, but your week now has to adapt. You have to adapt your week. You can't go at it 100% because eventually you will break down. So it's about kind of modifying your week to make sure come the Saturday that is when you're at your prime for the 90 minutes.
See, when you had those injuries, was there a point there where you thought to yourself, "This is ending, and it could be soon"?
Definitely. I think over the last couple of years, the club's been good at getting to the furthest rounds in the cup, which you always, as a player, you want to be involved in the games. And I've had moments in the national team, and they're the things that when you're at your lowest, you think that's what you're kind of keep going for. So it definitely crossed my mind. As I would say over the last year or so, I have appreciated it more and more just because it inevitably is going to come to an end in a few years' time.
Have you got a
Stevie,
year
can
in
I?
your mind?
Sorry?
Well, let Roughie talk. On you go, Roughie.
No, I was going to say, Stevie, do you think a modern day player picks up more injuries now than 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, but part of that is that the medics have got a bigger understanding of the body, of the different muscles and the injuries that or the things leading up to injuries that make the injuries happen. So I think you are aware more of them that way. But I think so. But it's the relentlessness of it. There's for some teams you can go year on year. We're getting like a 2-3 week break at the most. If you're a successful player at a team and you're an international, you're not getting much of a break, and inevitably it's going to catch you at some point. And I think you have seen that over the years, in recent years with players.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, Tam, I think everybody has found out, especially if they come to play in UK shores. The foreign players are amazed that we ram that many games in, and even when you get to Christmas and New Year, I mean, sometimes teams, especially in the English Premier League, are going through and playing one game one day, and then 2 days later they're into another game.
Yeah, I've always found that rather strange when we've heard various moans from clubs and players in Scotland down through the years about how they can't play 2 games in a week and all that. And then English football historically and traditionally has always done this bizarre thing where over the Christmas period, as you'll recall, Peter, they seem to play every other day. There's just this absolute glut of fixtures in English football. Sometimes hard to keep up. They just keep playing. So I think one thing with because we don't even know how this season is going to pan out. We know, of course, that for the Championship down, it is, of course, the late start. I think we should just try and batter into as many fixtures as we possibly can. Maybe even take another look at the fixture list and the lead up pre-Christmas, as long as the weather is fairly clement, trying to maybe even batter in with as many midweeks as we can. And that may hold us in good stead come the turn of the year.
Brian Morrison says, I think back to the 70s and 80s to now, the players are snowflakes now, Roughie.
No, I would agree with Steven said. I think the technical side, the doctor side, they identify tears here and wee blood vessels leaking, all that kind of stuff, which was never ever. If you went into a treatment room in our room with our physio, he would give you a wee rub and then throw you back out again. But now it's really thorough in everything they do. But just to get back to what Tam said there, Tam's just saying push in as many fixtures as possible because they're sitting down the bottom of the league. He doesn't want to be caught out the way Hart's getting caught out. That's why he's wanting.
Hey, he'll change his tune if they call the league. By the way, he'll suddenly be sympathetic to Stevie.
But if we do go down, I'll not be sitting here 4 months later greeting about it. All right.
which is why we brought Stephen on. It's the anniversary of Stephen and Hearts getting relegated. If you're celebrating 25 years, we might as well celebrate that as well. Anyway, apart from anything else, I was going to ask you this: what are you going to do, Stephen, when you eventually chuck it? What would you like to do? Are you going to coach?
I think management is where I find the biggest interest, even as I've got older as a player. Seeing a management of a manager, seeing the tactics and just learning. I've said many times, I learned the most under Martinez when he came in, and obviously the Spanish background of football and the British is different, and he blew my mind in terms of the way you're doing things, and then under the likes of Walter Smith, the man management skills are second to none. So that's what interests me, that and tactics rather than anything else. So naturally, I think that's where I'll progress when I finish. But it's okay doing well as a player. It's a totally different thing as a coach.
Yeah. What would you do after or going into the Scotland game on Monday? Because it's the first chance I've had to have a chat with you on it. If it's not players out of position, which the manager Steve Clarke has got it in the neck about, it's the overall performance against a third tier Czech side because of the obvious COVID restrictions. Scotland were heavily criticised. What do you make of it?
For the squad, it was a no-win situation. You don't go out and blow them away. People are saying it's a rubbish performance. You get beat, it's a disaster. But for the first 45 minutes, the team that they came up against, the Czech players were capable players with good ability in terms of good technical ability. The Scotland players were, I would say, were slightly off the pace, but they showed control. They weren't erratic. They didn't lose away for the game plan. It was an easy one in the eye, but ultimately they get the job done. They were patient enough to get the results, and first goal in itself, very good goal. And then Robbo does well for the penalty. So it was a very tough night overall, but the positive for me is in the hard situation times where everything's going against you, you stuck together and get a good win.
Yeah, you've mentioned the positive aspects of it. Let me get your professional opinion then on the negative aspect of it for me, and I'm not going to pull punches here, is the back line. I for the last 10, 15 minutes of that game, I was watching it through, I was watching it like this thinking we're going to lose a goal here because I think our defence still has the problem that it had 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
I said when we spoke about the teams, it's the biggest positional area that is up for grabs in terms of there is no fixed partnerships. The Robbo Kieran situation that everybody wants to talk about. So inevitably it's going to be a position that's you had Scotty McTominay playing there as well, which creates a different dynamic to it. But other than there's a bit of choice, but there's not all been fit and there's not been a consistent that the manager's been able to play the same two for a while. That hasn't helped either, but it's a situation. It didn't look great going into next month, but I think the manager will have an idea going into next month what he'd rather do. I think the team in general are more comfortable in a 4, but again, it goes down to personnel.
Yeah, I'm going to get Tam and Roughie's point on this, but I'm just going to ask you right now for your opinion on it, which is, we're going into the Israel game. Do you play Tierney and Robertson, or do you drop one of them?
I'd personally pick one and play the more comfortable back 4 than try and shoehorn them in. I think every manager that's had the two of them, Kieran's played in right back, he's played in the back 2, he's played in the back 3, Robbo's been a wing back. Robbo and Kieran are better getting on the ball and driving forward after playing a pass. And that's where they're most comfortable.
Tam, do you share that view?
Well, I'm only view on Scotland, and Roughie will back me up on this. I am not going to sit here and criticise whatsoever. We know it wasn't a great performance. We know the team that we were up on the night, but we are 5 games unbeaten, and we undoubtedly welcome a bit of confidence going into what is a huge game next month against Israel in the semi-final. And the main reason that I'm not going to criticise is because I genuinely did think that the Czech Republic's B team, the reserve team, their second string, whatever you want to call them, I did think they were going to win. And Roughie can back me up on this. On the day of the match, I sent the big man a text saying that the Czech Republic are 92 with the bookies to win tonight. Now, it would have been treason in my eyes if I'd have actually put the bet on. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But the bottom line is, I was fully expecting the ultimate banana skin for Scotland and that we were going to get our backsides felt. So as it turns out, we lost the early goal. Yes, we didn't look great. Yes, we never won a corner kick. Yes, we had a lot of players out of position. Yes, McTominay is clearly not a right back or a centre half. But Stevie Clark got the points on the board when nobody really, if they're being honest, fancied us, even against that Czech team. And I think that's what counts, the 3 points.
Roughie?
Well, after seeing the 2 games, I was obviously talking up there in midfield. I thought the midfield we had was very, very strong. And then lo and behold, we come to the second game and 4 of them are out the team and another 4 come in. I would have liked to have seen us get into the Israel game with a settled back four, not a settled back four, but an organised back four, a settled five if it's a five. But I think Stevie Clarke's got a problem now because he's got to decide who his best five midfielders, and if it's five, I would go four at the back. I think we're too vulnerable with three. And I've said it all along, I don't think Israel have got 2 goals in them. I think they're a very good side. But I think on the night our players will be more up to speed than what they have. They know what the objective is now, and I'm hoping they can lift their game, and I'm sure they will lift their game. The big boy Dykes up front looks a good big boy up front. I'm sure Stevie would love to play off him if he had enough games under his belt. That's what he needs. So I know I'm not downhearted about the Israel game because I think we're good enough to beat them. I think they'd have to be really good to come to Hampden and beat us because, I mean, although they did well in the one each, they'd only won about 1 game out of the last 8. And if you see the game over there in Slovakia where they scored in the last minute, they didn't look that impressive at all. So I don't think that we're coming up against a fantastic side. I think we just have to be organised.
Yeah, with that in mind, are you optimistic, Stephen, that we can get past Israel in this next game?
I'm very confident. I think there's a lot of aspects in that last meet up there with the amount of players we had in England who have only been back a week, 2 weeks, so they're not at their sharpest. Like Roughie said, in a month's time they'll be all match sharp, and the manager as well. He goes in depth with his analysis of the opponents and what is required. And he firmly believes it's get the job done. Well, if we're sitting here in a year's time going to the Euros, we're not going to be moaning about the Czech result or the performance in the Czech result. So I think I'm fully confident that we can go through.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Listen, there's just one little bit of music come in, Roughie, and I think it's probably pertinent for you to give us your thoughts on it. The Southampton boss, Ralph Hasenhüttl, has said one of either Fraser Forster or Angus Gunn will be sent out on loan this season. Alec McCarthy will remain Southampton's #1 goalkeeper. So one of them is going out on loan. What a decision that is.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I'm sure that's why the big man went back there. He thought he was going to be #1. But certainly it just shows you, Stevie will know better than us what's happening down in England. Would these players prefer to be in the eye down in England and another club are playing up here? You know, he seemed to have it in his mind that he had to be playing in England to get back into that England squad. That's obviously a wee bit of a blow for him. So we'll have to just wait and see where he goes on loan. That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. Ninth Legion on YouTube says Steve Clarke is a top coach and performer, just as Gordon was. Give him time. Yes, we are going to give him time. It's just when you have to comment on individual games, you can only offer your honest opinion on it. It was a hard watch. In fact, both games were indeed a hard watch. Just out of curiosity, Tam, I mentioned there to Steven Naismith what he wanted to do when he eventually hangs up the old boots, and management clearly is on the agenda. This week, I thought it was really good to see some people have been giving him in the neck. Barry Mackay, who plays at Swansea, is in his spare time studying to be a hairdresser. Apart from anybody who obviously was, poking fun at him, I say good on him, because people have got a plan for life after football. Not many players, in Roughie's generation actually thought about things after football, but more and more players now, I think, are thinking about life after football.
Yeah, I'd now like to go away for 5 minutes and think about hairdressing puns to do with footballers, but it's good that he'll still be playing up top. That's as far as we'll go for now. But no, it's great. I think the best post-football career that I ever remember hearing about, and we interviewed him on a show about it a few years ago now, it was Kieran McInnesby. Now, I'm sure Steven Naismith would have played against Kieran in days gone by. And Kieran McInnesby, after football, his first proper job was as a cameraman on Babe Station. There is a job. That was his genuine gig. He operated the cameras on Babe Station, and I said it was very hard.
Did you?
Regularly.
I'm now going to ask you this. Did you make that up?
Check, Google it. Get one of the viewers just now sitting at their keyboard to Google it. Kieran McAnespie was the cameraman on Babe Station.
If Kieran McAnespie was the cameraman, Bonzo at the end here. Hello, Kieran. Is there any other jobs going? I can fit it into my schedule.
I'd be quite happy just standing there with the sound muffler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking here at some of the jobs. One of the best. I mean, Gavin Peacock. Remember him? He went on to be a minister. Ray Wilson was an undertaker. Eric Cantona did a bit of acting, of course. Shay Logan, I think, is studying to be a plumber. The best one for me is Thomas Gravison, Stephen. Thomas Gravison played poker and is really good at it.
It is so. What a career that is. To be fair, in general, though, I think when you go back to saying about in Roughie's era, no many folk talking about what they do, I think it's much more open now. See, young boys now, the players that are finishing and retiring are much more comfortable to talk about what they're doing, what they're studying. And then you've got the kind of prime examples of Stuart Armstrong and that, who have went and done a degree. So it's much more comfortable to talk about, but it comes very quickly. So you need to have something in the pipeline because it's on you before you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that in mind, our journalist Cheryl has been checking away in the background. Tam, I owe you a 100% apology on this one. Former Scotland under-21 player has quit his job at Babe Station to play junior football. McAnespie gave up filming naked women because of his love of the Scottish game. What an idiot, Tam. I can't believe it. Anyway.
That was it. Fantastic. If there's a stranger, let's get in the time you've got remaining. If any of the viewers can think of a stranger profession that an ex-footballer has gone into, I think he'd be hard pushed to beat that one, Peter.
Tam, nobody. Oh, well, Patrick McManus has come up with a really good one, and I have to say he's an absolute gentleman. Harold Bratback is an airline pilot. We've had Harold on the show, and he is a very successful airline pilot. I mean, I'm not sure what's an unsuccessful airline pilot. I mean, I don't know why I said that there, because the unsuccessful airline pilots are no longer. Anyway,
yes.
The amount of times poor Harold missed the runway when it was just right there in front of him. It was a terrible shame.
Yes, absolutely. You see what you started, Tam, because Colin Terraces says he thinks we're talking about these careers. He says Joby McAnuff was a toilet cleaner. So suddenly the program starts to go down another way. But nevertheless, always good to hear some of your points of view. We try and talk as much as we possibly can about the football issues of today, and obviously some other little caveats and stories that come out and emerge, some of them funny. As far as football is concerned, more often than not, we always on this show like to pay tribute to people. Tam's mentioned the anniversary of his BBC partner, Stuart Cosgrove, and himself, 25 years. Of course, sadly, Roughie, it's 35 years today since Scotland lost, one of the all-time greats in Jock Stein.
Yeah, it certainly was. Unfortunately, I was there that night, as you know. It was the most horrible experience ever. We just qualified for the World Cup qualifiers, and it all happened before us. A lot of people have their idea of what happened that night, and I think the big man just get caught so much up in the game, and obviously everything that happened after that, it's a surreal moment in the dressing room afterwards, just sitting there, not wondering, if the big man was alive or not. And as I've said in numerous occasions, even when we left the stadium, we didn't know the end scenario, and we never noticed it until news started getting filtered down through the fans leaving the stadium that unfortunately he had died, and a lot of people crying at the side of the road. It was a horrible, horrible night to remember, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the all-time greats of Scottish football. Certainly, we will not forget him on this show. And a lovely tribute there from Roughie. Hopefully, next week, again, we'll be talking about the football on the pitch in the Scottish Premiership. And then, of course, it'll get even closer to Steven donning the boots again and getting ready for Hearts and their assault on the Championship. So if you want to join us, don't forget, the Football Show is on Monday to Friday, 4 o'clock live on Facebook and YouTube. You can like, share and follow us. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I'm looking forward to, if we can pin young Naisy down to a Saturday or a Sunday this weekend, Roughie, we'll have him out wearing his PLZ Soccer training top, getting his photograph taken at the posters, Roughie, because they're looking good, aren't they?
Oh, they're fantastic. I think particularly the one down at Easter Road. I think he'll look really good walking by that one. That'll be a belter.
there's not one there, Stephen. Don't worry about that. Anyway, fingers crossed we're going to get you out there. Thanks to everyone who's contributed to the show, from Tam Cowan, Steven Naismith, Alan Ruff and myself, Peter Martin. We leave you with our very own tribute to the late, great Jock Stein.
It was a golden age, and he'll long be associated with that golden age. He was a trailblazer, and Sir Alex copied him.
An unbelievable legacy at club and international football. You would have to ask any player involved with Jock Stein at that time. Absolute tragedy for him to be taken away from us. A legend. I know it's treated lightly, but as managers go, he had the respect, more respect than any manager that I knew.
He came in, and within 2 years, of course, he revolutionised everything, and it's just sheer presence that you remember more than anything else. Because, if it hadn't been for him, none of it would have happened.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold Clark